Ever wonder what a government really says about another country behind closed doors? Well, today we've gotten our hands on something pretty special, a recently declassified U.S. State Department guide to Cambodia from back in 2004. Now, this isn't some public relations document. This was the internal crash course for American officials. So let's pull back the curtain and see how the U.S. really understood this incredibly complex nation. And this is it, the actual cover of the guide. The whole idea here was to get diplomats and other government folks up to speed and fast. We're talking everything from ancient history all the way to modern politics and culture. It's a super rare glimpse into the official American mindset during a really crucial time in Cambodia's story. Right from the start, the guide frames Cambodia's entire history with this one powerful metaphor. Just imagine this. For centuries, your nation has been squeezed between two massive neighbors. To the west, you've got Thailand, the tiger, and to the east, Vietnam, the crocodile. This single image, man, it just perfectly captures this long, tough, and constant struggle for sheer survival. Okay, so to really get Cambodia, you have to start where the guide starts, with its golden age. The legacy of the incredible Angkor Empire, it's the bedrock of their national pride. But its collapse is also this huge cautionary tale that still hangs over the country today. The scale of Angkor is it's staggering. We're talking about a civilization of god kings and architectural wonders that ran Southeast Asia for 600 years. To put that into perspective for you, the famous Angkor Wat Temple was completely finished before construction had even begun on the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. But, this immense power didn't last forever, and it all came crashing down when Thai forces sacked the capital in 1431. So, the big question is, how does a mighty empire like that just fall apart? Well, the guide points to the most popular explanation, which is called the hydraulic theory. See, Angkor's genius was its total mastery of water. They had this huge, complex system of canals and reservoirs that supported a massive population. But, the theory goes, they got so focused on pouring more and more resources into building these spectacular temples that they neglected the basic plumbing. The very thing that gave them life might have been what caused their death in the end. Kind of ironic, right? All right, now we're going to jump way forward in time into the 20th century. And the guide is really clear about this. You just cannot understand modern Cambodia without confronting the absolute horror of the Khmer Rouge. This was a time that was a deliberate attempt to erase the entire nation's history, its culture, its very soul. This quote from the guide, it really says it all. When the Khmer Rouge marched into the capital, they weren't just taking over the government. No, they were launching one of the most radical and brutal social experiments in all of human history. Their goal was to literally reset the country to year zero. And when they said total, they went total. They took apart every single piece of society. Money? Suddenly worthless. Markets? Closed. Religion? Forbidden. Doctors, teachers, artists? They were all targeted and killed. They banned private property. You couldn't even own your own fork. And maybe the most brutal part, they systematically broke families apart, separating children from their parents. The human cost of this experiment was catastrophic. In less than 4 years, an estimated 1.7 million people died. That was nearly a quarter of the entire population. And this wasn't just a war. It was what's called an auto-genocide. A nation turning on itself, with a cruelty that is just impossible to fathom. And to make that number even more real, the guide shows the chilling results of a survey of the killing fields. They found over 20,000 mass grave pits. The sheer scale of the violence is almost too much to wrap your head around, but it's physically etched into the landscape of the country. So after the Khmer Rouge were finally driven out by Vietnamese invasion, the country was just in ruins. The world basically had to ask itself a monumental question. How do you even begin to rebuild a nation that's been brought all the way down to zero? This led to one of the biggest international interventions in history. So the UN came in with this massive $3 billion mission in the early 90s. And their goals were incredibly ambitious. We're talking disarm all the fighting groups, bring home over 360,000 refugees, and hold the country's first ever free and fair elections. And they had some huge successes. The election happened, refugees came home, but the reality on the ground was way more complicated. The Khmer Rouge, they never gave up their guns. And the ruling party that was already in charge, well, they never really gave up control. And this messy reality leads us directly to the Cambodia that those American officials were trying to make sense of back in 2004. The guide basically paints a picture of a country where power flows through these hidden channels that you're just not going to find on any official organizational chart. The guide really boils down the power structure to two main things. First, you've got the official political power, which was held by the Cambodian People's Party, the CPP, led by the longtime Prime Minister Hun Sen. And then second, you have this informal but incredibly powerful economic system that's built around these networks called clans. So what exactly is this clan system? Well, the guide explains that if you really want to understand how Cambodia works, you got to look past the official salaries and GDP numbers. There is a massive off-the-books economy where money and resources flow upwards through these informal, almost family-like hierarchies. This is the invisible engine that really powers a huge part of the country. The guide gives a perfect example of how this whole thing works. Okay, imagine a teacher whose official salary is just $20 a month. You obviously can't survive on that. So that teacher collects a tiny informal fee from each student every day. They keep a little bit for themselves and pass the majority up to the school principal. The principal then keeps a portion and passes the rest up the clan hierarchy. Now just imagine that exact same structure happening everywhere in every single ministry. It creates this enormous cash flow that ensures loyalty and supports the entire system from the bottom up. So the picture the State Department paints in 2004 is of a nation in a really delicate balance. It's a country that's haunted by its past, from the incredible, glorious heights of Angkor to the horrific depths of the killing fields. But at the same time, it's desperately trying to build some kind of stable future. And in the end, the guide leaves its official readers with this one very sobering question. It's a question that really gets to the heart of Cambodian history, that cycle of being caught between the tiger and the crocodile, of internal conflict, but also of incredible resilience. And even though this guide was written 2 decades ago, it's a question that still really echoes today.